Well, many people talk about business education bubble or the higher education bubble in general, following some of the other bubbles that have occurred in finance, in technology. Frankly, I don't believe there's a bubble in higher education. Maybe there's increased competition. There's an increasing number of players, particularly in the second and third tier layers of higher education, and this affects business schools as well. But I guess that the very differentiated segment that composed of the leading business schools, the top ones in the US, in Europe and elsewhere, are not going to be affected by this increased competition. Bubbles have to do with not being able to cope with demand, and in this particular case, the MBA is still the hottest ticket in higher education.
I think for our purposes, where you have so many positions and you have many applications, doesn't feel like a bubble to us. It feels like very strong demand. There would be a bubble if there were too many graduates, and they would flood the market and cause a problem with anyone being able to get a really good employment after graduation. I don't see that as a problem. As a matter of fact, in many parts of the world, from what I understand, in Shanghai or in Brazil, I understand there are places where there's excess demand for leaders and for young managers. So I think the MBA is very strong now, especially at the top 50 schools or so. Very strong applications. And of course, the students, many of them borrow money, and I guess they have to be very careful as to where they're going to work and how they pay off those loans, depending on what currency the loan is denominated in. If you're denominated in a very high, a place where prices are very high, such as US or Europe, and you go back to a place where the salaries are lower and cost of living is lower, you still have to pay the loan back in the original denomination. So I think that has to be considered, or you'll be in trouble, just like some people bought houses and they can't afford to pay full price of the house. I think you have to be very careful. But in terms of the basic underlying demand and the balance between the demand for our students and our graduates and the supply, I think it's pretty healthy right now.
I agree, and in fact, applicants coming from emerging countries where they may find difficulties when they finish their programs and have to repay their credits. First, salaries are increasing very fast in all these countries. If you look at the exiting salaries published by the Financial Times, salaries in China or in Latin America are actually growing very fast, and they're coming more or less face-to-face to the American or the European salaries. But in addition, the applicants coming from these countries can get scholarships and many other support, given that our schools, yours, mine, and many others in our cluster are offering very generous scholarship schemes.
I agree. The costs and the benefits are just both increasing, but I think the benefits win. The companies are becoming more sophisticated. They need young managers who are more and more sophisticated, have a world view. So I think that there's going to be a strong, continuing demand for education as the world develops. And it may form some bubbles as it goes along where there are too many of a certain kind. But I think it's a very healthy thing. Right now, I think over-investing in education is better than under-investing if you're a young person. So I see no problem with there being an upward pressure in that respect.